but that's very exciting. I was out there this morning. It was a blast. Luke DeCock of the News and Observer, my friend. I have no idea if you were headed out to the soccer tournament at all, but it's a blast. I know you like the beautiful game, so just recommending it highly to friends.
Cool.
Perfect reaction.
Noted.
It's a perfect reaction. All right, let's get down to trading Martin Necas. The first thing I want from you, sir, is how interested are you in, like, do you think it's the best move for Carolina or him? What do you think about the idea of moving Necas?
Yeah, I mean, it's not. I mean, like, you've got a guy who keeps talking in the Czech media, or his dad keeps talking about how he wants to play center, who's a right shot, and then the Hurricanes, almost in the same breath, will come out and say, we need a right shot center. Clearly, it's not a fit here anymore. And I don't know that that's anyone's fault, but Necas wants to be a center. The Hurricanes don't think he can play center for them. He has value. It's just time. Ironically, I think Game 6 of the Rangers series, at least the first two periods, might have been Martin Necas' most complete game as a Hurricane, and unquestionably his most physical. You saw flashes of what he can be when he's fully committed to the game. His skill level obviously is off the charts. His skating ability is off the charts. But he backs into too many hits with his butt. He misses too many back checks. The Hurricanes clearly at this point don't trust him to play center. Maybe some other team will. Maybe he's just not a good fit for the way the Hurricanes play. But, you know, he's the king of being the guy who shows up in the frame after the other team scores, coming from the other direction. It hasn't worked here. I don't know that that's anyone's fault necessarily, but this is just a cardinal example of a team and a player that both need a change of scenery from each other. And the good news is he has value.
Yeah.
And if the Hurricanes play their cards right, they should be able to make themselves a better team.
I do think he has value to the point where I know I read in The Athletic that there was actually, he wasn't in The Athletic. It was actually refuted in The Athletic that, man, wouldn't it be great? Boston needs some offense, and Carolina needs a goaltender. Necas for Linus Ullmark. Who says no? And my first reaction to reading that was, the Hurricanes say no.
Yeah.
Because Linus Ullmark, even if Linus Ullmark had 2 more years left on a contract, that's not a good trade for Carolina. He's got more value than just a good goalie. I don't think Ullmark is a great goalie. I think Necas has more value than that.
I agree completely, and it doesn't make sense for the Hurricanes. If they're going to make a move for a goalie, it has to be an upgrade over what they have. And I don't know that Ullmark, he may be a moderate upgrade, but it's not the kind of upgrade that would make it worth the drop-off in skill you're going to have it forward. You know, if UC Saros had 6 more years left on his deal and you could get him in a trade for Necas, well then, yes, you would consider that. But you'd have to make that kind of talent upgrade in goal to make this worthwhile. I think with what you're looking for is a like-for-like deal. If you can get a right shot center back, from a team that likes Necas and is willing to give you something for him, I think that makes a lot of sense. If you can, with all the uncertainty about Brady Shea and Brett Pesce, if you can get a defenseman back, I think that makes some sense. Because look, Martin Necas has value. He is a player teams want. His film is great if you don't watch him every night. So, this is not a situation where you're dumping a guy and taking a third-round pick in return. This is a situation where you are going to get something. It's going to be a fringe top 6, definite top 9 forward, or a top 4 defenseman. And that's where the bar has to be set. That's what you can get for him in a deal because he is a valuable piece.
All right, so Anaheim is dangling John Gibson and Trevor Zegras. I laughed simply because Zegras is essentially Necas, just a little bit younger and on the other and swinging from the other side. And Gibson, who's got 3 years left in a contract, he's probably better than his numbers would indicate because Anaheim has been allergic to defending over the years. But I'm a little scarred by that. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, well, Zegras, I mean, if you're going to make a move for a guy who, couldn't get in their lineup at certain points during the year, you need to buy low on Zegras because there's no guarantees there. I think he's the kind of high-skilled player who would be great for the Hurricanes. I think he would probably thrive here. Certainly, you could put him on a line with Svechnikov and just give goalies whiplash as they're looking around behind the net. But I don't think that's necessarily the right trade to make for Martin Necas. You've got to get, and I've made this point, I'll make it again. You have got to get something back that is Necas comparable. It has to be a guy who can play in your top six, or it has to be a guy who can play on your top two pairs, because he is a talented player, and as frustrated as we may get with him watching him every night and wanting to see him take that next step to the next level, that doesn't mean he won't somewhere else if you trade him. You need to get value for him. So I think that's the most important thing for me. This is not the kind of deal you make for a mess of parts for a decent goalie.
Right.
And so that's not a deal to me that makes sense for Martin Necas. I mean, you're looking at, to me, I'm not saying that Martin Necas is a Matthew Tkachuk player, right? No, I'm not crazy. I'm not drunk. It's too early in the day for that. But look at the deal that Calgary made for Tkachuk and the parts they got back. You want to do a lower level version of that where, yes, you're losing a good player, but you're getting guys back who can help you and you don't feel that loss as much. That, to me, is the goal with a Necas deal.
Yeah, by
you're
the
not
way,
trading Necas for 3 first-round picks.
No, by the way, Calgary right now is not in love with the Jonathan Huberdeau contract that they signed him to immediately after executing that trade. Luke DeCock of the News and Observer is joining us here on the Adam Gold Show. You and I agree on this. I'm not sure there are great fits with a lot of the teams that we have heard. I don't think there's a great fit with Philadelphia. I know they floated the idea of Seattle, and I laughed.
Yeah.
Can you close your eyes and see a Ron Fancis trade with Carolina?
I can, and I'll tell you why.
Because he loves Necas.
Well, yes. I mean, obviously, that's why that's why it's even up for discussion. Yes, he does love Necas. He drafted Necas.
Yeah.
But number two, don't forget, the guy on the other end of the phone now, and some of the people making decisions in the front office, are guys who originally came aboard under Francis. It's going to be Eric Tolsky on the other end of the phone. Darren York is going to be in those conversations. Francis has a comfort level with those people. They worked for him. They flourished under him to some degree. I think, despite the relationship with Dundon, or lack thereof, that there's probably more of a diplomatic approach to this that would make a Seattle deal possible, where Francis would be willing to swallow his pride and deal with the Hurricanes to get Necas, because he would be talking to people he knows.
I don't know that Seattle has anybody that Carolina would really...
That's the next piece of it is there a deal that you could make that makes sense? I don't know that there is, but certainly I would feel like Seattle would probably be the highest bidder if it came to that, just because of, Ron Fancis inherited a little bit of that. He's going to get his guy from Jim Rutherford. I think Necas falls into that category.
Luke DeCock is joining us here on the Adam Gold Show. I can't believe you didn't even take the bait for the joke when I set you up for the Ron Fancis. He doesn't make trades for actual players. Has he traded humans?
It's a fair point. And I you can tell it's the off season. It's preseason for everybody. I should have jumped all over that, and I apologize.
I just let the joke sit there on a tee.
That was a hanging curveball down the middle, and I took it for a stroke.
All right. You referenced what the Hurricanes need. Well, they need a goalie who is definitely an upgrade, because so many people have asked me, what's the biggest difference? Why did Carolina lose to the Rangers? And I contend that we could talk about a lot of different things, power play not being great, whatever. They were out goaltended by a mile in that series. Shesterkin was great. And unfortunately, Freddie allowed too many soft goals. And Kochetkov, in the one game, allowed one bad goal that really hurt. And I thought that Rod just didn't have the trust in him to go back to him, because, honestly, Freddie probably should have been pulled after the goal that made it 3-2. So how does Carolina upgrade that position?
Well, I mean, I think you can. I agree with your point. I think you can take it considerably farther. That's 3 years in a row they've been eliminated by a team that won the goaltending battle by a wide margin. Shesterkin twice, Bobrovsky.
Yep.
So you can talk all you want about, well, teams overpay for goalies or goaltending fluctuates, and, you can work the market, moneyball this a little bit in goal. If you're a contender like the Hurricanes were the last 3 years, and maybe again this year, may have to wait till next year as they adjust the roster with all the turnover this summer. We'll see. I'm not prepared to make a call one way or the other on that yet. But at a certain point, you have to stop beating your head against the wall and say, how do we win that battle? Because our 5-on-5 play, the power play going AWOL every year certainly hurts, but the 5-on-5 play is good.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think you do have to look at options where even if this is a team that does not like to overpay for goaltending, if Saros comes on the market, if someone like that becomes available, do you try it and see how it works with goaltenders who aren't, picked up at the goaltending thrift store? I think Kochetkov is going to have still has a chance. I say still like there was a chance. Kochetkov has a chance to be a very good goalie.
Yeah.
And that process is going to play out. He is still very young. And I absolutely would have gone back to him in that Rangers series for Game 5, actually. I think that's when it made the most sense and stay ready for Game 6. But I will go down swinging on that point. I think they missed the trick on that one.
I thought they missed it in the Islander series. I thought Kochetkov should have played one of those two games on Long Island, Game 3 or Game 4.
Fair point. I don't disagree with that either, although I think it was a more pressing conversation against the Rangers. But yes. The argument I would make, not to relitigate something that's been settled, is are you trying to win one game, or are you trying to win 4 games, or are you trying to win 16 games? And I think if you look at it from the latter two perspectives, you do it completely differently. Their goaltending decisions were, how do we win the next game? And I think that came back to haunt them.
That is fair. That's a fair point.
That's another story.
All right.
I think. Sorry, go ahead.
No. You UC Saros is somebody that I would be interested in if Nashville had somebody else that would be worth the trade of Necas to Nashville. Saros.
But
he's only got one more year.
Right. You can't give up Martin Necas for a guy who might leave.
Well, that's why it has to be something else.
Or, can you do a deal at some point where you get to talk to Saros about an extension and do not a sign and trade, but a trade and sign where you have reached an agreement with him for a long-term period. I don't think UC Saros would want to do that.
Right.
Frankly. I think if he's going to hit the market, he wants to hit the market. So I don't think that's realistic. But that is one circumstance where you could potentially do that deal. But yeah, you don't look at Nashville's roster and say, there's a natural fit here for taking a goalie who's going to be a UFA next year and player X for Necas. So that's a tough one too. It's just, it's funny for the last couple of years, it's been, the Hurricanes have brought so many guys back and they ran things back last year. There really is a degree of uncertainty, not just with Necas, but with the defensemen and all of that.
Teravainen.
Teravainen,
yep.
Martinuk. I mean, there really is a Gensel. There really is a sense of it's hard to get a feel for what is the immediate direction of this team going into next season. Long term, it hasn't changed because the core is good. This is unquestionably a playoff team to some degree with the players that they have, especially down the middle. But when you look at what's the immediate prognosis for next year, it's hard to tell. I think the deal that they do end up making for Martin Necas will have a tremendous amount to say about that.
No
because
question.
If you can get a person back, whether as a forward or a defenseman, who makes you better, and there are players out there who will make you better, maybe not as fast or as skilled as Martin Necas, but make your team better, that's a big step forward for the Hurricanes as they sort of enter this next iteration of the roster, with the guys who are leaving.
Luke DeCock, before we say goodbye, 15-second answer for you here. Seth Jarvis, 8 times 8, good for you?
Yeah, I'm not concerned about that one. He's going to be worth the money.
Yeah.
8 feels just feels a hair high to me. But I think you do what you have to do to get him locked in long term. The cap's going to go up.
Yeah.
He's going to be an explosive two-way player for you. I think you do what it takes to get that done for 8 years and move on.
In 2 years, 8 times 8 won't feel all that high. Luke DeCock of the News and Observer, my man. What?
But you got to remember, Adam, you got to leave room for Mitch Marner next year.
Stop it. At Luke DeCock on Twitter. I'll talk to you later, man. Thanks.
See you, bud.